I'm very, very happy to welcome Senzeni Marasela to this artist's talk. Really delighted she's with us. And she's someone whose work is of personal interest to me, and I've been working on it recently. I've known Senzeni since the early 1990s, when she did her Bachelor of Fine Art degree at Venice University when I was a staff member. She graduated with a fine art degree in 1996. She's somebody who's always been very special to me. And as you'll see, her work deals with the most sort of amazing themes to do with the politics of gender, I think, primarily, and location, and apartheid histories and memories. You'll see, I'm sure, that she's going to deal, you'll see from the invitation, with her works engaging with Sarah Bartman's history. She's also engaged with an amazing theme she's introduced and developed over the years called Theodorah in Johannesburg, which has got a complex iconography, but it's of huge interest. She's exhibited nationally and internationally. She's becoming increasingly known as one of our top artists, and it's such a pleasure to have her here with us today. So welcome, Senzeni. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction, Brenda. I graduated 1998. I finished, actually. I hope you can all hear me.
Yep.
Okay. I finished my degree 98. It was not 96. I would like to just make that clear. And I think even from my undergrad, I started. I think there was a lot that I discovered when I started my undergrad that I previously had no knowledge of, And for me, the archive has always been very important because I go back to it repeatedly. So what I'm going to do now is just do a slide presentation of my work, and I'm going to look specifically at Theodorah Comes to Joburg. Okay, and then I'm going to end with the images that I've put in the invitation. So I'm going to try and put up the slides and allow it to play through, and then we can go back to it every now and then. Okay, it's up now.
Yep.
Okay, in 2000, this work starts in 2003, titled Theodorah Comes to Johannesburg, where I put on my mother's dress, which and then I took photographs. I just didn't allow my face to show at the time. And then I took photographs around sites in Johannesburg where my mother has memories, where she had walked, had been, had seen a lot of very traumatic things. And then after, I think when I was creating that, I struggled a lot with what I discovered, through files, and it was also the aftermath of the TRC around the time. So I did that work, and because working on fabric actually starts on my undergrad, where I produce tray cloths. I found images trauma. So and then laid them on those tray cloths. And then I used, I used quite a lot of fabric from my undergrad again, and from then again, 2003, there was quite a lot of fabric work that I did, a lot of stitching, trying to map a new narrative around Theodorah. Because Theodorah is a persona that exists in my work, and I try to reimagine her every 10 years. So in 2011-12, I decided to give Theodorah another journey in a work called Waiting for Gebane Ijeremanelam. And at the time I was reading Njabulo Ndebele's book, The Cry of Winnie, I have here on the screen. And this book is about 4 women who are waiting, under conditions and circumstances. And because they're so traumatized by this idea of waiting, they end up having this imaginary conversation with Winnie Mandela, because Winnie Mandela, as most of us would know, waited very publicly, and in a very humiliating way, for almost 27 years. Um, so I think with that story at the back of my mind, I then reinvented Theodorah, and now I make a wait for Kebane, who is a fictional character. This is a man that lives in a village, lives there with a dress. So this is a dress that I put on for 6 years. Every single day, I had it on. I had multiples of the dress, and so I was trying to now play with this new image that I had of this seemingly rural woman in Johannesburg. And I went through quite a lot of experiences. When I tried to travel in a dress, overseas and even around here, and quite a lot of things that I didn't expect when I moved around, that quite took me back. But then and I guess my performance, I took it out. It was a 6 year stretch, which now when I'm out of the dress and thinking about it, it may have been a bit too extreme. Um, but then again, I had a lot of these dresses, which and some of them, which I will show in a show that I will be having later on, that you'll see how they faded and made marks, because I didn't come out of performance. I was Theodorah at home when I stepped out, when I traveled to do presentations about my work. Um, sorry. Um, and it wasn't also and also it wasn't just the cry of Winnie Mandela that I was looking at. When we go back through literature, The Great Expectations is a book that I read in high school, about this woman who was very tragic, who was abandoned at the altar, and just allowed herself to sit around this decay, Miss Havisham. I think the Great Expectation too had quite a lot of impact in my choice in staying in this dress quite continuously, and of course Dolly Parton, whom I'm going to discuss quite later. I've collected little footage on Dolly Parton, who every time that she speaks about her work, about how she never comes out of character. She is in life, as she is on stage. She continues to work. Um, so in her work, this that I'm showing now would have then been the beginning of, um, you know, trying to archive my experiences and memories of moving around the city. So I guess instead of um, drawing or writing, this is I chose this method of working, um, where I drew this narrative. So this work, I guess, is mind maps that I found and which I still continue to work through, where my figure, my persona Theodora, attempts to clean the mind spaces, because these are also very traumatic spaces, for a lot of Black women, I guess. So this is how that happened. And then I'm moving to failing 1 to 11. Okay. At the beginning of the performance, I wore these two shawls, one around the waist and one around the shoulders. They were quite heavy to carry, because it's also part of the dress that I chose for Theodora. And then when I decided to stop wearing them, I I drew mind maps on them. These failing slopes. Because in the reef, I guess starting from Roodepoort all the way to Springs, you have these mine um, these mine residues, mining residues. They are sinking, they're affecting water around. where people live. There's quite a lot of people who still live around these things, and I deliberately made these shows quite heavy to carry, using red thread again. I will show the rest of them in a later date in a show, but this is some of them, the earlier ones. And this is also documenting waiting for Gebane. And this work looks at reconstruction of the studio photograph, you know, because when I grew up as a child, we used to go to studios with our mother to take photographs to send away to relatives, you know, so that they can see that we were well looked after. And you know, and they were also quite very black middle class things, you know, because they were quite expensive to take. So for these construction of studio photographs, you know, that's what I thought about when I started making them. You know, I present Gebane in like very rough lines. You know, and I've not seen the need to draw him completely. He exists for me, you know, I guess, and I don't uh, think I'll ever draw him in full. But he's just represented in those lines. I've chosen backdrops from all over the world, I guess, you know, fantasy places, romantic places, places with great love stories. I like the Taj Mahal that you see here. Um, okay, I'm trying to come. Oh, my sorry. You just have to forgive me. My tray. Okay.
Well, Senzeni, we can see again. There we go.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yes,
It's
we
just that my
can.
network is quite poor this side.
Okay.
Okay. So now I'm just gonna go through the work that I did. Waiting for Gebane on the day of his departure. So the idea of this work, okay, which one I made a conscious choice to use umbhaco, which loosely means the cloth of hiding in Xhosa. It was otherwise known as a kafir sheet. And, you know, it's a cloth that a lot of us artists use. You know, there's so much, I guess, mythology around this cloth, about how the first Costa King to escape Robben Island escaped wearing umbhaco. Um, I think for me, then I also see it as a cloth of resistance. You know, and I deliberately work on it, you know, because of this history. So what I did here with waiting for Kevin on the day of his departure was to try and
Senzeni, you're
emotions
cutting out.
lived.
Senzeni,
Okay.
you're cutting out. You might want to just give us this chat onto the slide again, because we missed it. It was your
Okay, let
word.
me just do slides and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, so these would be the slides, the work, the Kebane on the day of his departure. Okay. Um, okay, can I'm back now. Okay, so, so what I've shown you, I call a very large series that I've chosen to do, and I'm still working, I guess, on the rest of it, because my processes are quite labor and who's had a very difficult life, whose early memories that I have is of her sitting on the edge of the bed sewing. Quite continuously to the head, objects that tell the stories and stories of their lives and their struggles. There is a group in Bedi in the Eastern Cape that makes mpako from scratch. They have an age-old way of working on it, and it's quite labor intensive, the process. And I exclusively work in red, because I remember when my grandmother was still alive, and the stories that she used to tell us about the red dust. Um, my own father, who's just recently passed away, they were never sure how old he was because he was born at the time of one of those red dusts. This would have been any time between 1936 to 1939, 40, 41, where they were moving soldiers from the villages. And then because there was so much red dust, and this is something that was unusual because every time there was dust, it spelled, I think, for people who were living in the villages, these were disruptions. These were beginnings of missing gaps, were beginning of families fragmenting, and some of these men never returned to the space. Is in a way trying to fill those gaps, trying to acknowledge those gaps in history, those gaps when people didn't know, when there's so much of their family life that disintegrated and was missing. um, and also thinking that my own family is part of that history as well, and especially women, because there were quite a lot of them in my family that were left behind by men who took years to return. Um, and just get so this is the one of the earlier works, because I'm going to now speak briefly about Sarah Baartman, who comes in and out of my work. I started finding out about Sarah Baartman while I was at Wits, in one of the lectures. There was no way I could have known where I grew up in Boksburg. Um, and it's also a story that I think every time I've worked with Theodorah, right at the end of all projects, I've looked at Sarah's story. In this one is when I completed, well, the first part, Theodorah comes to Joburg. Um, I decided that to take these large panels and stitch covering Sarah, because I figured that if I could cover Sarah, there could be we could have other conversations about her besides her being this naked caricature. So I've continued, I guess, going. It continues now that I've started, um, that I've taken off the dress for waiting for Kebane. And I'm thinking of in 2010. I now realize now, 10 years later, that I didn't cover her enough. Um, so I continue to do that again 10 years later, work on a new body of work that now looks at Theodorah, after she's finished waiting for Kevane to recover Sarah and to put another layer. to keep this image of Sarah Batman warm. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Are you able to hear me?
We can see you once again on the screen. You've now come back. And your image has disappeared. But we can't see you again. Cutting out a little bit now and then, so we can hear you.
All right.
Yeah. Are you able to go back to the image? Senzeni, are you able to go back to the image?
Okay, let me try and get back to, because I
There we go. It's back.
Network problem here. Do I go back to the last image?
Yeah, the one you've got there is performing Theodorah, the portrait in the Venice Biennale in 2015. That one, yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna. I think this image was taken in 2015 for Artsy magazine when I was working in Venice. I was part of the Johannesburg Biennale. In one of the church squares in Venice, I took these bags. We call them skonzekai, Chinese bags. And I attempted to create an island, cordon off a piece of land in the church square in the middle of Venice, and try and perform. So what I did there was write Theodorah stories, stories that I'd collected the last 2 years, because I'd worn this dress in 2013. So I was in Venice 2015. I think it was May that I was there on a 4-day performance that I did, writing quite endless. A lot of people walked through my work. They would come and talk to me, stand on top of it. In the end, the wind and the rain, they took away what I was writing. Because when I went back the last day, there was absolutely very little, when I'd spent so much time in the sun, mostly on my knees, trying to write the story of Theodorah in the space. I think it was also one of the first times that I was quite truly shocked about how women that would look like Theodorah get treated. Um, the woman who stopped me when I tried to go to the grocery store because they thought I was a refugee, and they were telling me that there's a church group that I should come visit, where they could give me stuff to take back to the continent, and they were telling me how they understand the level of poverty that exists in Africa. This is because I had not even said a word. They said hello and they started speaking, and they went on and on and on about how they can give me some dairy products and something to eat and some decent clothes to wear. I think it was after some time, and I told them, no, I'm actually an artist. I've come to the Venice Biennale, and they just left me there. Um, um, I wanted to go to the church, but then I was so busy caught up in the work that I was doing to go and see these refugees. And I noticed that when we went out at night, we saw quite a lot of uh, refugees from like Pakistan. There were quite a number of African refugees, but we only saw them at night. During the day, besides seeing artists from all over the continent, and some of them I'd met on my travels in the US, they would see a red dress and shout, "Hello, Senzeni," from a distance. Um, and I think for me, after 2 years of being in a dress, when I was in Venice, it was the first time that I really struggled with what I was doing and what I'd imagined Theodorah was and how she would be received. Um, a lot of questions that I guess I had to answer as well about why I looked a particular way. Because I suppose Theodorah's dress is also a very poor working class dress. When I walk downtown Joburg, which I still do because that's where I get the bulk of my material from, when I was wearing this dress, I looked like all the other women who are hawkers who occupy the edges of Johannesburg. So there was really nothing unusual about me downtown Joburg, But then when I go to these parties, curators' parties, to collectors' parties, to some meetings in Sandton, in Hyde Park, I stuck out. I stuck out. It delayed a lot of things. People would take time to come and serve me when I'm sitting in a restaurant in Sandton Square, and some of them would just look at me in complete shock. To people trying to help me buy things. Um, and then I also realized that there's not a lot of women that look like me that necessarily walk into Sandton Square. And it's not that it's my favorite place as Senzeni as well. But then I began to understand how women that would, if, was Theodorah's type, if I could say that, how they struggle to access space. Because Joburg itself is a very difficult space for women. There's been quite a lot of things that women have gone through, stories of being attacked in the taxi ranks to, I have quite a lot of friends who just wouldn't go to the CBD, they're morbidly afraid of that space. To find quite a lot of women again on the edges of it, hawkers selling things. Um, well, I've since taken off the dress, I guess, after 6 years of struggling with it. I think there were some quite funny and great moments when people would try and help me get on the bus and get off, and would be extra kind to me when I walk in spaces, would treat me in different ways because this dress also stopped behaviors like catcalling, which happens quite a lot. And when men are dressing you in a particular way, because I guess those that understood what I was wearing thought that I was a married woman, which I guess Theodorah is in the context of the story. Um, so I'm certainly glad that I took the dress off. Um, uh, and it traumatized my family. Yeah, what I was doing, because I refused to take it off even for family functions. I was always on it. Um, and it got to a point where I bought a camera and tripods so that I could put myself in family memory. Because otherwise, they were very happy to not include me when they were taking family photographs, or or try and take them quickly when I was not there. So I inserted myself into family history because I'm in all of them: the family weddings, the family birthday parties, the family functions, and quite forcefully so. And I made sure that I'm quite visible in them. Um, so at the moment, I'm going through a transition where I'm trying to imagine what I'm going to do with Theodorah, whether like the previous times when I took on the yellow dress and Theodorah comes to Joburg, and then took on the red dress for Icheremane. Because I still need to continue performing Theodorah and performing the stories. Uh, so I'm kind of now taking 2 years to work on what will become of Theodorah in the next installation, and um, doing quite a bit of research and writing and considering. I do know that a lot of it is going to be about Dolly Parton. Um, I don't want to say that I'm obsessed with her, but I have all her music. I've seen all videos uh, of Dolly Parton. I continue to collect a lot of material. Uh, Dolly Parton is very important to me for a number of reasons. Number one, we grew up with a lot of censorship in South Africa, where there was so much that we couldn't watch. You know, I think we had SABC 123, and then Mnet came in, um, and because we didn't have opportunities to go to the movies, didn't have much recreation, we had television, and for the longest time, my parents were the only one who had a television in our street. This was the 80s. And our form of entertainment was Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers in the evenings, because they had a run in the 80s, both of them. I think it was Las Vegas, but they were on television every other night. We listened to them, and it was the greatest thing that we knew, all these runs. Um, you know, and also when Dolly performed, she was dazzling on stage, you know, with all these bright uniforms and different wigs and makeup. And then when I grew up, I noticed that when I traveled back into the village where I met my aunts, you know, there were so many poor working class women who started wearing wigs, you know, and all this makeup that was over the top. You know, the rise of shoulder pads in the weddings, especially in the 80s. There's a number of photographs we have of that. And my aunts want nothing to do with those photographs now. You know, that a lot of them knew Dolly Parton, you know, and I knew of her music going back to the 70s, you know, because Dolly Parton enters rural home through gospel. You know, there's a lot of gospel music that Dolly going back to a time with Potton, you know, probably the most famous, The Coat of Many Colors. Um, you know, there's still people to this day who play Dolly Parton. I was listening to Josie FM the other day, and someone requested Dolly Parton, and I thought that's quite strange that a lot of people claim not to know her, or yes, you still have this generation who still requests the music to be played on radio. Um, I've seen that she's done quite a lot of collaboration over the last couple of years, especially around her song Jolene. You know, with a lot of young artists. You know, she's collaborated with Lady Smith Black Mambazo over a couple of songs. Collaborated with Miley Cyrus. Did a collaboration with quite a lot of the country singers in America. You know, and and I guess one understands that Dolly Parton, you know, comes from a very rural, um, probably very conservative part of America. Um, you know, because it's you know it's something that I was quite questioning on, or probably this one writer was trying to make me aware of. But my interest in Dolly really lies in her performance work. You know, and the fact that she's just such a permanent part of my childhood, and you know, a permanent part of my mother's memory, a memory of my aunts, a memory of a lot of the black women who, a lot of the music actually, I just, you know, um, so these would be, I mean, I think these photographs I took around about the time of, before we went to Venice, and I guess we're really trying to show people there's quite a lot of these. I mean, I have about 38 of them at the moment. They're all over. Some are in Europe. I have some, yes, I'm in Cape Town. Um, they will soon go on show. You know, I think to me, after some time, they stopped looking the same, you know, because I wore them so much, wore them every day around the clock. There were some that were my favorite that I wore to family weddings. I wore when I traveled to presentations, wore to friends' parties. Um, Okay, I'm back on the shared window. Hello.
You're showing us the slides from Jeremiah Lum 2013 to 19 near the beginning.
Okay. I don't know if maybe can I take questions because my internet is still quite low for me to show again.
Sure. I mean, it is shared, but I'm not sure if you can move the images. But I'm very happy to put questions to people.
Okay.
Or the opportunity to ask.
Yes.
So, people, what would you like to ask Senzeni?
I don't know if hi Senzeni, it's Philippa. I don't know if you mentioned
Hello.
how long you would continue to dress as Theodorah. Is this a project? Is it a permanent project? Is it something you could? Is it like a lifetime commitment type of thing?
Because I started doing this in 2003 with Theodorah Comes to Joburg.
Wow.
It was published in 10 Years, 100 Artists, and I think there's a number of publications that looked at that work. It is, I think, working with Theodorah, the persona Theodorah, it is a lifelong commitment. The performance, Icherimanelam, Waiting for Kebane, I started that in 2013 until 2019. So then I would have worn the dress for 6 years. I will have worn it for 6 years, actually, every day.
Wow.
And sometimes I would change it 2-3 times a day, depending on where I was going. If I needed to show up in a shiny dress in the evening, if I had a function. so it was on
And then do you, if it gets torn or worn through, do you mend that dress and carry on with it, or do you throw that dress out and get a new Theodorah dress?
No, well, all my dresses, one of my dresses were made by the same guy, all 38 of them.
Wow.
The more I went to get dresses from him, he was complaining that when am I going to choose another design? Why am I busy with the same dress again and again and again and again and again? And I tried to explain to him, I guess halfway through when and I said to him, well, I wear them every day because I come to you with one on. I need them for weddings. I need them for all sorts of functions. And it's important to me that it remains looking the same, I suppose.
Okay.
For me they don't. When I see them in a mess, I know which ones would have been earlier, middle, and the ones that I kept for weddings and parties and going to see people. Yes, I wore the dress for 6 years.
Wow.
Senzeni, you mentioned that they're going on exhibition. How will they be shown? Did I understand you correctly? How's now they're going to be?
I had them on show in Boston, I think about a year ago. Where we showed them in a clothing hanger. There were 5 of them, and I chose them, I guess, from various periods. There was one from very early on that I chose, and 2 from the middle of the performance, and one of the latest ones, which was still very shiny. So there is a show again in Paris, looking at those dresses and looking at the performance video that I did in Venice, and then other work that would be shown that way. And then I guess there would be another show in the near future where I will present probably all of them, the remaining ones.
How have you found the transition to no longer wearing the dress? Because you stopped about a year ago, and it was so much part of your reality for 6 years. Have you, in a sense, been searching for your own identity beyond the dress in the time since?
Yeah, I think on the day that I took the dress off, which was on October, there was just a sense of relief, that I could go
Wow.
back to, um, to being myself and choosing clothes and choosing colors. To about a week later, beginning to struggle. As much as it was very difficult to wear the dress and carry it, it offered a lot of protection for me.
Yeah.
In terms of how I was treated where I lived in Soweto, because people would call me auntie, they were allowed to come in front of the lines, um, which is something that I thought was fantastic. And I guess I became this very familiar figure around the yard where I still live now. To people kind at the gate and say that I'm looking for this auntie who's always wearing a red dress, and everybody knew exactly where I was. And it's like more than 800 families here. To I still, because I'm still in the process of doing performance videos. Every now and then, because I have one dress left, I had to pack it away because I had my youngest daughter, who is now 5, wearing this dress. She was born in 2015, and all she saw for the first few years of her life, 4 years, was me in this dress. And when I took it off, it was still in the wardrobe. She would open the wardrobe and take the dress out and say, "Mama, let's go out. Here, put on the dress." I had to pack the dress away, because of that. Because there wasn't much she saw me in, So she imagined that in order for us to leave the house, I have to put the dress on.
Wow.
So I think she's the reason why I packed them away. I put them, they're in storage at the moment. So that she can meet her mother in a different way,
Wow.
But when she sees photographs of the dress online, she still says, "Oh, there you are, Mama." I said, "No, it's not me. It's photographs of me. Here I am next to you."
Sincerely, does your immediate community within Soweto, do they not perceive it as a performance? Did the community with which you engage never understand that you were, in a sense, performing Theodorah, and quite self-consciously wearing that dress? Or did they not get it?
I think that a lot of there were many people who asked, and I told them
Yeah.
what the story is. And a lot of them didn't quite get it because they would ask my children, and they've had to answer quite a lot of questions about me. And for some reason, I didn't realize that people noticed me.
Yeah.
That much. Up until my children would come back from school in a bus, and they would tell me that, "Hey, there were people who were asking us about you. Why are you always up and down in this dress? They wake in the morning, they see you in a line buying fat cooks. You have this dress on. You are in the garage." And then I just realized that people actually noticed me. Well, I guess I would have had to if I looked almost the same every day, and I tried to make sure that the headscarves looked different.
Yeah.
But I guess that wasn't noticed. But they oh no, yeah, and I guess it became quite easy to mark me and my presence by this dress, and people kind of, because I remember when I went to the US to a conference and they came to pick me up at JFK, they just came straight to me. "Hello, Senzeni, we've come to pick you up," and I couldn't pretend that I was surprised.
Yeah.
Uh,
Can I ask something, or shall I wait for someone else to have a turn?
Well, you're welcome to ask Philippa and
Okay.
our people.
And
As you,
after you, Philippa, I want to turn.
okay.
Yes.
As you're talking, I can't help wondering whether all those relationships you had with people around you for those years that you wore the dress, whether they, once you changed into other clothes, did those relationships shift or alter in subtle ways? And did you experience, if they did you experience those past the relationships in their past forms as a bit of a bereavement, the loss of those relationships?
Yes, because I think probably about a year into the performance, I realized that there's quite a number of people who just don't want to be seen around me or talk to me. And I think when they realized that I wasn't going to change this performance, I was quite loud. I probably was left with quite a few people that I was speaking to, with the exception of my family who couldn't go anywhere, but to stick around. Um, I think a lot of people must have thought I was insane, because I think that was a question that my own mother kept on asking me, that how do people relate to you, especially with the community work that I do every now and then.
Yeah.
Mm, and a lot of them, as I say, would call me auntie. Um, some of them were like visibly older than me, but I guess for some reason it kind of also aged me a little bit, whatever that is, being on this dress. So I was Auntie Senzeni for quite a couple of years in this dress.
Oh.
To now being just Senzeni. To because I've noticed now the same people that I still speak to, because we just went on a community program this morning. To someone shouting me, hey, Senzeni! That didn't happen. I had this dress on.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I just wanted to say, Senzeni, that I didn't know about your interest in Dolly Parton. And I found it quite fascinating because I remember reading an interview with Joseph Shabalala. And he was asked which international artist was most important to him, because he played with a lot, including Paul Simon. And he said Dolly Parton. And so your interest now in him makes sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think for me, my interest in Dolly Parton, it ties me to so many people. We have such, out of, Dolly Parton and Bless Bridges are such a big part of my childhood. Because when I try to talk about Bless Bridges to some of my friends who I went to school with, they get angry. I grew up in Boksburg. Bless Bridges had concerts in Boksburg Lake. We walked through Boksburg Lake going to the bus stop.
Yeah.
There was no way children of my generation didn't know about Bliss Bridges. It was always on TV. And I guess even then, quite a lot of people thought he was very strange, and he was he was at the receiving end of a lot of very nasty jokes because of the way that he performed. But a number of those women that he gave roses to, because I still remember this very, very clearly from in Boxburg, he would sing in the lake and hand out roses. But a lot of them would be very emotional, because we used to stand on this railing uh, behind those performances, and I saw a number of them, and I'm not the only one. Walking around and handing out roses. But it's still this whole Dolly Parton setup with this like very big hair with all these curls and these very thin eyebrows, and a lot of very colorful makeup and shocking red lipsticks. Those are part of images of my childhood. Because when I think of Dolly Parton, and I go back to a lot of those women that I saw in my childhood. And And I remember there was this particular sect of women who used to wear blue dresses. They were called the blow rockers, weren't they?
Oh yes, on the
Yes.
East Rand, the
Yes.
blow-uppies.
Oh yeah, blow cappies. You know,
Yeah.
they also, because I remember one of them came to the school that I was in Boksburg. I don't particularly remember what she said, but I just remember being fascinated by her hair.
Yeah.
You know, there was not even one hair in the wrong place and nothing was moving. You know, because the poor rockers, as conservative as they were, you know, their hairstyles reminded me of Dolly Parton so much. You know, that I actually never, I don't see them much now, even when I go back to Boksburg. You know, but there's always you know, these things that take me back to that period of my childhood. And again, for me, Dolly, you know, she says it herself when I've listened to, you know, I've just watched on Netflix again, Here I Come. I don't know why, but I've seen the documentary so many times. Where again, you know, she says, I'm on stage and at home, you know, this idea of performing continuously is there, you know, that she doesn't know how to separate the Dolly that performs on stage and the Dolly that lives in the world, that has family and relatives. Um, for her, she remains the same person. Um, I think for me that gave me a lot of strength when I was doing Theodorah Comes to Joe. Well, the performance in Jeremane, you know. Um, and I think during that time as well, there was quite a lot of Dolly Parton work that I did. You know, there is a series which I'll also show at a later stage. All these interactions that I have with Dolly Parton, all these conversations and what has, whether they're imaginary or not. I've always wanted to meet Dolly Parton. It's probably one of those big ambitions that I have to one day meet her somewhere, you know. And I know she's never performed in South Africa. Performs a lot in Australia and New Zealand. Has never been here in the country. You know, we I mean, we've tried, me and friends of mine, to write her letters. I don't know at her age if she still wants to travel and perform in the continent, and whether that would be possible.
So when she made the recordings with Ladysmith Black Mambazo, it must have been over there then.
Yes, you know, because they travel a lot.
No, in fact, certainly the video was done as sort of two separate spaces and married together. That I know. That video is extraordinary. They weren't actually even in the same space from something I read on it. That amazing video that I saw.
Yeah, but they've performed together on one video titled The Peace Train.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So they have met and performed together.
Yeah.
The others, you know, they were quite remote. Because in one of her videos, Dolly Parton does mention them, Ladysmith Black Mambazo.
Wow.
Because there is quite a couple of songs that Dolly Parton collaborates with Ladysmith Black Mambazo. So I guess that's a South African connection that we have to Dolly Parton.
I'd love some other questions for Senzeni, and I'm sure there are.
Hi, Brenda. I've got some reflections and a question. Hi, Senzeni.
Hello.
Hello, my name's Alex. I'm a postdoc fellow with Brenda's project. This work so moving and so many layers to it, and the resonances that it has. It was wonderful hearing about it. Thank you. I was struck how it felt like it was an act of ghosting your mother and women like your mother, but also a bringing of it's a ghosting, but also because you're very real and alive, it's a presence, it's a now, it's what is to be a woman in that dress now. And somehow in that, and then particularly the ghosting in terms of when you were talking about your family and their responses, that felt very strong, but how it also becomes a kind of immortalizing, a making iconic through wearing the dress continually and having so many of the dresses. So I have two questions for you. I'm curious, firstly, were there moments in those 6 years where you took your dress off, even if it was to like put your pajamas on or put something else on? And in those moments, how did that feel? So that's the one question, or what did you experience? And the second question is, how do you think the work would have been different if you had just had one dress and you wore that one dress until it fell apart?
Well, I did take it off to put on pajamas.
Good, I'm relieved to hear that.
And then in the mornings when I would like run in the yard, I wouldn't have it on. But then I didn't allow people to see me, or I didn't open the door without the dress on.
Wow.
And I certainly didn't give anyone a chance to see me without it on. I think for me, probably when I finally took it off and started to try and live fully as Senzeni again, as I've said earlier on, there's quite a lot of difficulties, because in a way, it was very hard to wear it, but it gave me a lot of protection. There's something that I miss about it, even though I'm not going to go back to wearing it full time. I'm wearing it now because I'm taking videos. We're producing a video for a show that I need to do later on this year, where I try and narrate the story in a video format. But sure. It became like a second skin, the dress. Just open the wardrobe. There they were, all eyed, sparkly. And I just had to sort them out, which ones I would wear. The ones that I wore at home, which were torn. And at the beginning of the performance, I actually only had 2 dresses for about 8 months. I'd put one on, quickly come and wash it, so that I could have a fresh one on the following day. That was very difficult to do, because initially that was a plan to have probably 2 or 3, and try and live tidily within those 2 to 3 dresses. But as one has to work and travel, it wasn't going to work, because when I still had 3 dresses, I went to New York. I was there for almost 2 weeks, and I tried to wash them at night, hang them in the washing, and try and iron them. And the person that I was staying with was not interested in an iron, and I really didn't like going how do the dress and looked creased, and then I think when I came back from New York with those 3 dresses after 2 weeks and trying to do all that washing, I started increasing the dresses. And these dresses, they went up to 38 because people, a lot of artists would like donate a dress. Malin Dumas bought me 10 of those dresses. She paid for 10 of them. Quite a number of collectors, Hussein Mohammed, Luanel, Lynn Cooney paid for some of them. My father, 5. Even though he was in protest fiercely, he ended up paying for 5 of those dresses. Yeah, so I guess it started, and also the story of Theodorah was it's not about my own mother. It's also, there's so many women, I guess, who've heard the story that is similar in a way, and right in 2014, I wanted about 150 of these dresses, I have so many of them, to wear and put aside. But I never got to reach the number. I settled at 38. which I still have. The first 85, they're quite torn. They're quite. There's one that I have here in the house. It's completely torn on the sides because I think I must have worn it too much. I will show it as well.
Oh.
And one more thought. It's curious for me that Dolly Parton is so costumed, and her costuming is all about celebrity.
Yes.
And you wore a costume for all these years, which was not about celebrity, about being very everyday.
Yes.
That's quite a cool balance. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear you talk more about the kind of the flip between those two, and also considering Dolly Parton's working class roots.
Yes. I think also for me putting the dress on, I was so determined for Theodorah to be visible everywhere where I was, and with an understanding that I carry that story wherever I'm seen. I think it's also the reason why I just didn't take it off. Even when I went to weddings, because remember my cousins would phone me and they would say to me that if I don't have money for clothes, they don't mind chipping in and getting me a decent dress to show for the wedding. Just saying to them that no, you don't understand, and I guess by the third year, I was quite resolute, and the commitment was there, that this is it. I am going to wear this dress and stick it out for 6 years, so that could be this permanent feature in people's minds, so that I can be seen all the time, So probably in a way, I became some small celebrity myself around where I live, and in the art community, most people had to see me all the time in the dress. Yeah, so
it's
I hope
also
it.
Thank you.
It's also sacrificing the opportunity while you're young, in a way, of being kind of sexy and pretty and showing off and that type of thing for 6 years. How did that feel?
Because I gave away a lot of my pretty stuff. To cousins, friends. I gave them handbags, shoes, jackets.
Wow.
And I stayed with just the dresses. It was also to take away the temptation to wear those clothes again. Tired of the dress. There was temptation every now and then to just put this whole Theodorah dress aside. But I realize now that 6 years in it is a huge chunk of my life.
Yes.
In dress. My children were growing while I was wearing the dress. My son finished high school. He started high school with me in the dress, and he finished high school with me on the dress. When I would go to school, he would say, "Oh no, they told me that you've come in the yard," because they saw you at the gate. So, it's and it's something that I certainly would not have done in my 20s. Wearing the same dress repeatedly, so it's like, I guess because I was in my late 30s and I'm now 44, with age it became easy to carry, easy to make the decision, easy to be not actually, probably, I could work with more conviction at this age. Make decisions, stick with those decisions, with an understanding that I would be ostracized. It's okay. There's a mission that one has, and one needs to probably rise above a lot of pettiness, because I understand that clothes are a marker of identity. They place you in some sort of a hierarchy. They say a lot about who you are, and people usually then treat you based on how you look. I look the same every day. I saw the scorn in some of the eyes of the women when I went to very high-end parties. Because women make a lot of effort when they go out. You know,
Yeah.
they dress up, do nails, hair, worry about what they were going to wear. I didn't have that problem for 6 years. I just had to choose the shiniest dress, you know, the one that I felt good in when I walked out of the house. So when they see a woman amongst them who doesn't seem to make an effort, you know, especially when one is in a collector's party somewhere in Kemps Bay in Cape Town, where someone took 5 hours to get ready, and you don't, you know, you immediately see people alienating you, because you know there were times when I would stand alone in a corner,
Wow.
you know, until someone familiar shows up, who you know, who are going to strike up a conversation with someone that I recognize. So I lived through those things with my Theodorah. Um,
Are there any other questions that people would like to ask?
Hi, Senzeni,
Hazel.
it's Hazel.
okay.
It's nice to see you again. I find it very interesting that you talk about the way people treated you differently when you were wearing the dress, and yet you didn't behave differently. I remember you saying
No.
how you would sit down in a restaurant and the waiters would sort of shoo you out because they didn't think you could afford it, or the security guards wouldn't let you into a place because they didn't think you belonged there. So it wasn't your behavior at all that determined that. It was purely the persona you had adopted, that people judged you to such an extreme level, which was really interesting. You did not. Were you ever tempted to behave in very specific ways that were Theodorah? Because it seems it was the opposite. You behaved in a very neutral way as Theodorah.
You know, I think there were quite a few times where I had to fight for myself. I was trying to walk in to one of these setups in Joburg. I think it was probably no, where was I? Arts on Main in the direction. And I had this Chinese bag with me, and I was still wearing my shows, and the security guards wouldn't let me in. They said, "Sorry, no hawkers here."
Wow.
I'm mad, you know, because I had a meeting there, and I was running late for the meeting. I went on a warpath, you know, and eventually they had to call the supervisor, and he apologized and stuff. Um, I think for me, because I was always on the dress, and there was so much Senzeni that remained inside the dress. That sometimes I almost forgot that I had it on, you know. And then it's only when this type of behaviors came up, you know, then I became Senzeni very quickly. You know, when I do get into spaces, um, and 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 once I had to go to a meeting in Sandton, and I was asked all these questions, and I was like, "But I have a meeting here, and this is the time that I have to be in. Why are you delaying me?" You know, and then to come and fetch me downstairs because they absolutely would not believe that I was coming to this building. Yeah, well, there were instances where I had to raise my voice and fight to Senzeni, fight for Theodorah to come in.
Wow.
Because otherwise I would have stood out. Or probably when I was going to a party. I remember once I was in a party to Sandton, and I said to the host, "Please come fetch me at the gate. I don't want to deal with security guards." And he did that.
How does your mother respond to the Theodorah? I mean, you've spoken about your family generally, but your mom in particular, particularly as it has her name, the dress, the persona is named after.
I mean, she's known about what I was doing from the onset. You know, and she's the one that would call me when I was starting to work on Theodorah in 2000. Because when I was growing up, she would wear one dress for a very long time and she would discard them to when I was telling her that I want to start performing, you know, and I want to take on this persona, Theodorah, because it was 2001 when I had this discussion with her, and telling her that I wanted to wear her clothes, you know, because she doesn't speak, and women of a generation didn't have an opportunity to speak and be seen. You know, she gave me those dresses, you know, and she saw quite a lot of the work that I did earlier on, I think she struggled badly with the 2013 to 2019 dress that I wore every day. Because I remember her and my father once, we were going to an event, a family event, and I had to go home. So I arrived in this dress, and both of them were shouting at me that, when am I going to take it off and find more clothes? They're so tired of this dress. If I ever come here with them and hang them on the washing line, they're going to burn them.
Oh,
And they complained all the way to the function about the dress. They had a hard time, because I didn't look like so and so's daughter. And I came to see him all the time, and I went to quite a lot of spaces with the dress on. And I tried to explain, because I remember my father then would say, "But can't you just do this performance when you're with your art people and then change when you're with ordinary people?" And I tried to tell them that no, that's not the case. Um, that's not going to happen, So I guess they learned to live with it after some time. And when I took it off, and when they saw me about 2 weeks later after it was taken off, then they started interrogating me about what happened now. Why is the dress suddenly off? Am I defeated? Have I had enough? Um, and then I had to tell them that no, I actually have to now start working again, because I realized that I couldn't wear it forever. Well, at least I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wearing that dress. Theodorah has to move, has to evolve as a persona, because I'm not Theodorah. I'm Senzeni. I continue to be Senzeni.
Do you think it was something to do with class? Your mom having once worn that kind of dress, but now would want to be perceived as middle class and not as a rural woman. And perhaps your late dad as well.
Oh, no, of course, yes.
Or was it to do with sort of some identity she didn't want you to have too? Because it was they were her dresses. That's what's sort of strange for me.
I think this dress, there's a lot of women downtown Joburg who wear the dress.
Yeah.
A lot of very poor working class women, a lot of very rural women wear it every day. And people that wear it now, that wear it on the day of the wedding and hide it very quickly. So no one keeps it for prolonged periods of time. And you still find much older women wearing it. So I guess it's a dress that represents poverty in a way that I guess for my parents and a lot of my family, which are quite middle class, who are interested in very fashionable things. And then, of course, being middle class is also a very visual thing. People have to see you in a particular way, and I didn't look it. I didn't look it for them. I didn't look acceptable for them. And I guess there wasn't much they could do about that. They couldn't stop me from from coming to whatever family gatherings we had, attending. But they were definitely, and they were very vocal about being unhappy about the dress. And when I'd been to weddings and I'd come and show them the photograph, they would all zoom into my dress and how I looked out of position, or everyone looked so nice, made so much effort, and there I was with this red dress in such a big wedding, not looking like everyone else. But I'm there in family memories throughout the 6 years that I performed in the dress. I made sure of that. Myself, so that there wasn't a part of family history that I wasn't there, that I'll be missing because I'm performing as Theodorah.
Any other questions, people?
I just want to say, if I may, that Senzeni, I think that you've been remarkably generous in the way that you've shared with us on this project, and the depth and the detail that you've gone into, and the project itself so thoughtful. I don't have a question. It's just a comment.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Philippa. Thank you for saying that.
Mm.
And I think the iconographies of your works, Senzeni, are incredibly rich.
Yeah.
For me, somebody like Dolly Parton performs a sort of version of womanhood very self-consciously and with a touch of irony. And that's what makes it radical. It's because she does it self-consciously. And that's where I see the commonality in your work. That by wearing the dress, you're also performing a particular role and version of womanhood very self-consciously. And I think your work is equally radical and very, very potent and very, very relevant. Thank you very much for being with us today to share.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity and the people who came along to listen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very
It's been an
enriching.
absolute treat. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you. It
Senzeni.
was very interesting.